Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be making some cranberry muffins and we're going to make them from scratch. I've got a bag here of cranberries that I had in the freezer. I got them really cheap after Thanksgiving and stuck them in the freezer until I had a chance to make something with them. So you're going to take equal parts of cranberries and water. I have about 12 ounces of cranberries here, so I'm going to add 12 ounces of water. And then I'm going to add some lemon juice. You can use real lemon if you prefer. And probably about a tablespoon or so of the lemon. And then I'm just going to stir it up here just a little bit. So there's not a lot of liquid in there, but it covers the bottom layer of it. I'm going to put this on the stove top, and we're going to start by bringing it to a boil. I want to make sure that everything gets stirred around a little bit so that everything gets the same amount of heat, because you're going to want all of those cranberries to pop open, and you'll be able to hear them pop and see them pop, so you got to be careful standing over it because it will pop out little bits at you once in a while. Now we're going to make this into a cranberry sauce, and cranberries, are very tart, so they do take quite a bit of sugar, but they're so good when you get them made fresh. And we're going to cook these down. So once this comes to a boil, we're going to turn the heat down to a simmer, and we are going to let that simmer for about 20 minutes. And you're going to want to stir it often through this time, because otherwise, as the liquid goes down, it'll get where it'll stick to the bottom of your pan. Once that cooks down, I put this in a sieve because I wasn't sure how firm it was going to be, and I didn't want it to be real liquidy, so I was going to drain off the liquid, but it actually ended up being pretty much thickened the way I like it, so I really wouldn't have had to do this step, but I just have it on a sieve. My sieve was a little bigger around than my jar, so I put that over a bowl to keep the mess, but like I said, I wouldn't have had to do this step because it was firm enough the way it was. So I'm just transferring that over to another bowl. And that's all there is to it other than adding the sugar. And this is going to be purely based on personal preference. Of course, it's going to be sour if you don't add any sugar. But we are going to be making muffins out of them, so you will get some sweetener in the muffins that will help cut that bitterness. I added about 3/4 of a cup of sugar to this. And then I'm just going to let this cool, and it will thicken upon standing also. It'll make like a nice gelled, like cranberry sauce. I happen to be out of brown sugar for these muffins, so I'm going to make some. You just take a cup of brown sugar and a tablespoon of molasses. If you want it to be dark brown sugar, then you add almost double the molasses. So I'm just going to make light brown sugar. I've got about 3/4 of a cup in here, so I'm going to do not quite a tablespoon of brown sugar, of molasses. And I'm just going to stir this around. It works a little better with a fork, so I do switch to a fork here. It just doesn't glob up as much, and you can get that molasses scattered around on everything a lot easier. And it just takes a few minutes to get that worked down in there. So if you're ever out of brown sugar, it's just so easy to make if you happen to have molasses on hand. And it's nice and fresh. So these are really going to be made from scratch. So we're going to go ahead and get those pieces of molasses worked into the sugar. Just keep stirring it over and turning it over. I happened to get this molasses over at the Amish where we shop, and it was only $1 for the bottle, and I was going to make ginger snap cookies at Christmas and use some, but I didn't have any ginger at that time, and so I never got to make the ginger snaps. So I thought, well, I have this molasses to use up anyway, so it worked out good. I can use a little bit of it this way. I usually only go to actual grocery shopping once a month to get my pantry staples and my condiments and things like that. So I've been out of brown sugar since Christmas. We did all the baking and everything for the holidays, and it's been cold out, so I've been doing a lot more baking, and so I've been out of brown sugar, and this works just as well. So now that that's done, we're going to go ahead and work on our muffins. So we're going to put 2 eggs in the bowl. And we're also going to put in that brown sugar. Oh, I'm sorry, not the brown sugar, the vegetable oil. I have 1/3 cup of vegetable oil and 3/4 cup of milk that I've added. And I'm just going to whisk this up a little bit here. And when I get those stirred up, then we will add the dry ingredients. And I will get a separate bowl out for that. Usually I make it work in the same bowl, but just to save on dishes. But I wanted to, this was a kind of a concoction I was coming up with on my own. And I wanted to make sure it wasn't going to clump up, the flour wasn't going to clump up. So went ahead and I put the flour in a different bowl here. So we're going to want 2 cups of flour. I usually keep my dry ingredients in glass containers, and I got these at Dollar General. They work really well. So I've got 2 cups of flour going in. And then we're going to do that sugar and also 2 teaspoons of baking powder. So here we've got that baking powder. And once we get the sugar in, then we will just mix it up a little bit, get everything together. Once we get this all incorporated, we will blend the liquid and the dry together. Now, this isn't going to use all of that cranberry sauce, so we will be able to split this and make something else with the other half. I think I'm going to make cranberry meatballs, so you might want to stay tuned for that another time. I found a good recipe that I think if I make my meatloaf recipe and make it into meatballs, then I can make like a cranberry glaze sauce to go over them. So I'm going to try that here coming up soon. So now I'm just mixing those together. And your batter will be a little bit lumpy yet. You don't want to overmix muffins. So I'm going to take about half of this. And we'll just kind of fold in that cranberry sauce. You don't want to mix it all the way because then you'll have pink muffins, which is fine if you don't mind. I just kind of fold it in a little bit. And then I use silicone muffin tins instead of using liners. So I'm going to put enough batter to fill each one of these cups. And these aren't going to expand too much, so I'm filling them almost to the top. And this will make 10 to 12 muffins. And I like to put muffins in the freezer. So it's just the two of us here, so I usually leave about 4 of them out. And then I'll put the rest in the freezer in packs of, 3 or 4, however many to go in a package. Michael's not a big bread or sugar sweets kind of eater. He's more meat and potatoes, so I usually don't leave too many out because he'll only maybe eat 1 or 2. These are going to cook at 375 for about 18 minutes. And here's how they came out. They're really good, have a nice little bit of tartness to the cranberries. And that's all I've got for you today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.